Outrun on Nintendo Switch. Actually, a really good port. Outrun came out in the arcades in 1986, of course, putting Sega's Superscaler arcade board to work. And it's a game that I probably wasn't familiar with until the early 90s. I wasn't hanging out in arcades very much in 1986. I was 5 years old. I was freaking 5 years old when this game came out. Holy shit. So yeah, I first saw Outrun when I was like camping. I don't even remember where it was. It was like my dad took me and my sister to some campsite, and they had like a small arcade. I remember they had Pit Fighter. They had the original like Mario Brothers, and probably like a couple of other games, and then they had the stand-up arcade version of Outrun, and that was the first time that I ever like saw Outrun. First time I ever played Outrun. And yeah, so that was probably in like 1993, actually. So even in 1993, I was still impressed with the way the game looked. You know, this was a time where I was still playing Super Nintendo, and seeing Outrun on the arcades with its scaling, you know, is something that was still impressive in 1993. I probably didn't even realize at the time that this game was 7 years old. Again, I probably didn't realize this game came out when I was 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, the first game I ever saw was like an Atari 2600. And to fathom that this existed at the same time, I mean, I would have blew my mind if I was even old enough to comprehend. But I was 5 years old, so. But yeah, looking back at it, I probably didn't even realize that this game came out when I was 5 years old, and it was still impressive. So yeah, that was the first time I played Outrun, would have been probably in 1993. Yeah, later on I picked it up for the Genesis. I picked up a copy for the Master System. I've really fallen in love with the version on the Game Gear. That's actually like my favorite one to play. I don't know why. Maybe I just like holding the Game Gear. It's so comfortable in hand that I really like playing Outrun on the Game Gear. And been playing so much of it lately on the Game Gear that I was like, I want to play something closer to the arcade version. I was, gonna bust out the Genesis and play Outrun on the Genesis, and then I was like, I should double check if this came out on the Switch. And sure enough, it did. This came out a couple of years ago, I think 2019, and it was developed by M2, so it's probably gonna be pretty good. It is pretty good. It's the same guys that did the port of Virtual Racing on the Switch, which is the first game I bought online. This is the second game I bought online. I own all the Switch games physical. Like all the games I have, I own physical. The only two I've ever downloaded or bought off the eShop was Virtual Racing and now Outrun. But this is a really good port, and it's because it's very, very accurate to the arcade. But they've added some extra music. They've added some extra graphic options if you want them. So you can play it in like a pixel perfect sort of like integer scale mode, or you can fill up the screen, or you can play it in 4:3 where it looks like you have like the little arcade cabinet around. And then you've also got like some scan lines and some smoothing options. Why does anyone want the smoothing options? Ugh. But yeah, you got some decent scanline effects, and the little arcade cabinet effect with the scan line looks pretty cool. They actually kind of gave it like a domed look where it kind of gets a little darker in the corners. They really make it look like it's on a CRT. That's pretty cool. But I mean, otherwise, it looks and plays just like the arcade. Again, you've got some extra music. You can change difficulty, and you can change how much time like you get per section. So you've got like an adjustable difficulty now. It's not like the arcade where it's just one straight difficulty, which is hard as balls. You can make it a little bit easier. And what else? You can change the controls. So, if you want like A or B to accelerate, or you want to use like the L and R, then you can. The only complaint I have, I guess two very minor complaints. You cannot play in 4x3 that fills up the like horizontal screen. You can only play in 4x3 when you have this arcade bezel thing, and it does take up a lot of space on the screen. I wish you could just do like a full 4x3. Minor complaint because the widescreen, like the 16:9 widescreen mode, doesn't stretch anything. The HUD stays the same. The HUD stays where it is, and you just see a little bit more to the side. So it's like a true proper widescreen conversion, as you would expect from M2. They're not going to stretch that shit. And what else? The controls. You can set like what buttons do what, but they don't let you use like ZR, ZR and ZL, ZL and ZR. The triggers, as I call them. You can only use like the bumpers. And for me, when I'm just holding the Switch, it's a little bit more comfortable for me to rest my fingers, my index fingers, on the triggers, the ZL, ZR triggers, than it is to kind of reach up and hit the bumpers. So I really wish you could do accelerate and brake on ZL, ZR, but you can't. So I'm doing like accelerate and brake on L and R, the bumpers. A little less comfortable to hold. By default, you got to hold A, I think, to accelerate, and that hurts my thumb. Like holding A the whole time to accelerate kind of hurts my thumb, which, you know what, brings me back to the goddamn Game Gear, because, you know, in the Game Gear version, holding a button to accelerate with my thumb doesn't hurt my thumb. The Game Gear's so chunky. It just fits in my hand so well. You know, and I've said the Switch is fairly comfortable, but it is really small, and holding A is not as... It kind of hurts my thumb a little bit, so I changed it to R. I just wish you could do ZR to accelerate, but for some reason, you can't use the triggers at all. The ZL, ZR isn't even in the options, which sucks. But again, minor complaint. The fact that you can change the controls, you can change the difficulty, you've got some screen options, you've got some extra music, and on top of all that, it's just like a damn perfect, an arcade perfect port that looks and runs great. It's awesome, and it's a... Outrun for me is always a quick pick up and play game. I like on the Game Gear, it's something I'll turn on before I go to bed. I'll play it for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll turn the Game Gear off and go to bed. And so having that on the Switch is great, because like I said, I was going to bust out the Genesis and all the connectors and hook it all up and get a controller. But you know what? This is like the perfect little game. Quick pick up and play on the Switch. Makes sense to me. Hence I bought it on the Switch, and I think it was like, I don't know, $8.99 Canadian. It's a pretty reasonable price. So yeah, Outrun on the Switch. I think it's worth if you like Outrun, it's definitely a worthwhile version to pick up.